encourage more people to get vaccinated. But is it really working? The data says no.
Overall trend has been decreasing even in the last 12 days.
And a lot of you have been asking, where's all that money from Metro's homeless tax ending up? Well, we've got the budget breakdown.
It is just an opportunity to be able to change the lives of people in our community.
And we're talking to this week's Hey Help recipients, the Boys and Girls Clubs, about how they've supported kids through such a difficult year.
Like just checking in about how they're doing, how they're feeling, what's coming up for them. I think that really helped a lot of kids.
Here's the story.
Excited for that segment. That's a great one. Welcome to all the non-Blazers fans out there, and to those of you with zero attention span and multiple screens, I guess, who are watching us on YouTube while you have the game on as well. We'll take what we can get. This is the story. Dan Haggerty is actually off this week, if you haven't heard. He's back next week. In the meantime, I'm Maggie Vespa, and if you haven't watched us before, this is the show where your questions and your comments drive our coverage. All the ways to contact us are at the bottom of your screen. Email the story at kgw.com. Reach out on social media with the hashtag HeyDan. Our team is watching for your feedback right now already. So with that, let's get started. And we'll kick things off with our big story, which is all about vaccine lotteries. And I say lotteries, plural, because you might have heard that now Washington has joined the lottery game. Governor Jay Inslee just announced a bunch of prizes that you can win for getting vaccinated, including $1 million. And there will also be 5 weekly drawings for $250,000. That starts next week. On top of that, students can win scholarships, and then there are non-cash prizes as well. Those are up for grabs. Things like airline tickets, tickets to sports games, Xboxes, passes for free camping and fishing and hunting licenses. It's a bunch of stuff. It's a big bag. And the same thing as Oregon, by the way, you don't have to do anything extra to get your name thrown in the hat. If you are already vaccinated, you're already in. Don't worry about it. If you're not, if you get the vaccine, then moving forward, you will be in the running as well. And speaking of Oregon's lottery, how is that going? Because keep in mind, the state did this hoping that it would make more people want to get the shot so the state could reopen sooner. It seemed like an easy plan. Well, our Pat Dooris looked into this, and apparently it's not really working.
When Oregon Governor Kate Brown presented the COVID lottery to the state, she clearly hoped it would increase the numbers of people getting the shot for the first time.
So if you've been waiting to get a vaccine or you just haven't gotten around to it yet, we're going to give you an extra incentive. How about a chance to win $1 million?
Turns out a lot of people either missed that message or were not impressed. KGW compiled a running list of the number of new people getting vaccinated each day in Oregon. A few days before the announcement, it was 23,000, then 17,000, then 21,000 new people a day. On the day of the announcement, nearly 15,000 new people got the COVID shot, but the numbers have fallen ever since. They hovered around 12,000 a day for a bit, but are now far below those numbers. June 1st, only 4,900 people got the shot. Oregon is roughly 130,000 people away from meeting the governor's 70% goal. It's going to take another 27 days at that rate. I had a chance Wednesday to ask Dave Baden, the leader of Oregon's COVID vaccination effort for the Oregon Health Authority, if the COVID lottery is working.
I think it's a little early to tell generally, but I think the data does not lie in that our overall trend has been decreasing even in the last 12 days.
He said there was a small bump in Sherman and Gillum counties, where one lucky winner in each county will win $10,000. And sure enough, Gillum went from 616 vaccinated on May 24th to 661 now, and Sherman went from 716 on May 24th to 761 now. Every county in Oregon is giving away $10,000 to one lucky winner, but the odds are obviously best there. But no other county has had an obvious impact from the vaccine lottery. Baden is not ready to say the idea is a bust.
It's a little early to tell, especially knowing that there's going to be some additional advertising and more ways of assuring that every Oregonian knows that, that this incentive is out there over the next couple of weeks.
COVID vaccine lotteries are popular around America. First launched in Ohio, the idea is to give away a pile of money to a lucky person chosen at random and all you have to do to be eligible is get the COVID vaccine shot. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine wrote an opinion piece for the New York Times and said, "The results have exceeded my wildest expectations in terms of getting people in Ohio to get the COVID shot." Back in Oregon, Wasco County Commissioner Kathy Schwartz is also a nurse and spent Thursday morning giving COVID shots at a clinic where she asked people about the vaccination lottery.
I sure did. And I would say a lot of people still didn't know about it.
She said more people are motivated by the $50 gift card that Wasco County is giving to each new person who gets the shot, although to be fair, many would take that $1 million grand prize.
They were excited about it once they heard about it because I would tell them about it. And they also thought that they'd tell some friends and family about it that had not been vaccinated yet. But it didn't seem to be a real motivator for folks.
Pat Dooris, KGW News.
There you go. Final last point. Tell your friends. So let's stay on this topic with a viewer question. James asked, what about those of us who were vaccinated outside of the OHA? I got mine through the VA. Well, James, you are now in luck. Up until now, you might have heard Oregonians who got vaccinated by the VA and some of the tribes weren't being included in the lottery because their names were in a separate federal database. But we just found out the state actually has a plan to fix this. A leader at the Oregon Health Authority told us they'll allow you to submit your name for the lottery, and then if you win, you just have to prove that you're vaccinated. They still haven't worked out the exact process as to how people are going to send in their names and enter themselves in this lottery, but we will, of course, let you know when we get those details. And by the way, the deadline to get your first shot and then be included in the lottery is June 27th. The drawing for the $1 million prize and 36 other $10,000 prizes is happening the day after that. All that in mind, let's add some more numbers to the mix and count some vaccines. According to the CDC, more than 2.32 million Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose. We're getting pretty good. That works out to about 66% of the state's adult population. And officials say when we hit 70%, the state can fully reopen. So right now, Washington is reporting 3.85 million people have gotten at least their first dose. That's about 62% or 62.7%. A little higher there, of the state's 16 and older population. That's the metric they're using in Washington. And they're also aiming for that 70% to fully reopen. All right, let's talk homelessness now. And Multnomah County's historically big budget aimed at making an actual dent in this crisis. And part of the reason this budget is so huge is that the money from the Metro tax measure that voters passed last May is now coming in. So I sat down with Tim Gordon earlier to talk about this.
Okay, KGW's Tim Gordon joining us now to graciously help us break this down because budget stories are complex. So we'll try to whittle this down to what's essential. Can we first just talk about how big this budget is as a whole, and then how much of that money, like how big a portion, is being spent on homeless and housing services?
Sure, Maggie, this is a huge budget. It is $2.82 billion. It's the biggest ever in Multnomah County. Obviously, it's 37% bigger than last year's budget. So a whole lot of spending going on in the county. There's more money coming in, so that's helpful. We'll get to that. But you asked about homeless services. That's more than $150 million in this budget for homeless services, for getting people into housing and all of that. It's a big increase over last year as well.
Okay, so a ton of money being spent overall, and then also historic amounts of money being spent on homelessness and housing. Can we help people specific to homelessness and specific to housing kind of sink their teeth into where this money is going? Just like a couple of tangible examples of programs that are being targeted.
Sure. Well, I spoke with Multnomah County Chair Deborah Kapori this afternoon, and she basically said, we know what works and we're doing those things, but with this additional funding, we can just do more of it. So we're talking about things like rental assistance, getting people into permanent housing, wraparound services for all of that, behavioral health, and also providing more shelters for those who are not ready to go to that next level of housing. So all those things that they know work, more of it.
Okay, gotcha. So you mentioned more money that is coming in, and that's the thing that we get so many questions about. People ask, they say, hey, I remember voting for and seeing that a lot of other people did too, these Metro measures for supportive services and for housing, specifically May of last year, a big one passed. That money is now coming in starting on July 1st. So can we talk about just kind of what the plan is to what they're going to do with the revenue from that measure?
Right. Well, it increases the homeless services budget by about 50%, it's $52 million coming in. And it's going to take care of a lot of those same things, getting people into permanent housing, as we talked about, paying rent for people, getting them job training, and all those wraparound services they talk about. So again, it's more of the good same things. Chair Kapoor, though, did talk a lot about equity and about trying to make this transformational, trying to make big difference change as well. And there's some interesting ways they're going to do that. One in particular I thought was really pretty cool. They're going to do a test program, a pilot program, with 100 families, 100 Black women-led families who are women that are, juggling, trying to take care of the family in the home, trying to pay their rent and everything else. They're going to provide them basic income and also some services to help them continue to live a better life and to stay in the home that they're in so they don't become homeless. So that's that kind of stuff that's going to be happening with some of this money to really make some big change in our society. Mag.
All right. Yeah, this is a huge shift and a huge boost in revenue. And again, for anybody who was sort of, in the weeds in this, that measure, that revenue starts coming in on July 1st. So we're going to start seeing that money come in and see it be put to use. Tim Gordon, a lot to wade through there. We appreciate the perspective. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks.
All right, I want to remind everybody now about our Hey Help campaign. This week, we're asking you to consider donating to the Boys and Girls Clubs of Portland Metro. They help support thousands of young people in our community through after school and summer programs. And if you want to donate, just head to that link right there at the bottom of your screen, kgw.com/HeyHelp. And to get some more perspective on this, I talked to the CEO of Portland's Boys and Girls Clubs, Terry Johnson, about what they're working on now as kids get out of school for the summer.
We've been working with local school districts, and districts are wanting to make sure that during the out of school time, there is some intentionality and some strategy around making sure kids have the social emotional supports they need, that we're addressing mental health concerns and providing those kinds of supports. And there are some enrichment activities around making sure kids are not as impacted by COVID learning loss as they would be if they didn't have those supports.
So we also talked about how the Boys and Girls Clubs help kids work through some of the challenges of this year, including the pandemic hitting home for a lot of families and big conversations about racism.
From our standpoint as an organization, a lot of it, again, it went back to relationship and providing safe spaces for youth to talk about their experiences as they were moving into doing school online and, feeling isolated because they were not, on campus with their peers anymore. Kids were losing family members who were, dying from COVID or falling ill to COVID or could not work because of testing positive. The other part of that was whenever George Floyd was killed, kids were, because of the generation that we're in the advancement of technology, kids were seeing that on their screens, literally, and being re-traumatized over and over again as that replayed. Yeah, just helping you process all of those feelings and providing those mental health supports to help them kind of unravel and peel back the layers of what what was playing out. Same thing for staff because they were on the front lines, helping, dealing with their own trauma and then helping youth unpack their trauma.
Yeah, they do a lot of incredible work. So here's another way to give. Just open the camera on your phone and point it at that QR code on your screen. It'll take you to a link to donate. And we said before, we're calling this a micro donation drive. So feel free to give any amount, no matter how small. And each week, we're going to highlight a different cause. So if you know of a nonprofit or an organization in need, let us know and use that hashtag Hey Dan.
Fire season seems like it's already here. So before things really ramp up, let's check in on what we can expect. And I'm sure you remember the Oregon lawmaker who opened the Capitol door to far-right demonstrators. Well, an investigator now says he did it intentionally. When the story continues.
A lot of comments coming in about vaccines. Some fire for a Thursday. Man, welcome back. We always go through your tweets and your emails during the show, so keep them coming with that hashtag #HeyDan. Your feedback really does drive this show and what we choose to cover, so we love it. All right, case in point, we got this tweet from Hermione. Hey, Dan, can you talk about the potential for another horrific forest fire season here in Oregon? Predictions are that we're going to have the driest summer on record. So you're in luck because we actually are planning an entire week of wildfire coverage next week. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, a little taste here. Let's turn now to Chief Meteorologist Matt Safino. So Matt, what can you tell us about sort of the outlook at this point?
Yeah, so Maggie, first of all, to Hermione's question, the forecast for the driest summer on record, I have not seen that forecast. And keep in mind, we usually always have really dry summers here in the Northwest. We get very little rain. We have a wet season, dry season. We are entering the dry season now. So even if we have a really dry summer, it doesn't really mean that we're getting a lot less rain than we normally get because we get so little rain in the summertime anyway. But some considerations for the fire season. And I got to tell you, Hermione's question, I've been getting that really since last fall, since those fires died down. I got those questions all winter, and I've really been getting a lot of them now that we've had such a dry spring. So Hermione, you're not alone. Everybody has been asking me about that. So some considerations. Yes, we have had our record dry spring. It is the driest March, April, May period on record in Portland. We've only had a little over 2.5 inches of rain. So that factors into it because we're setting the table with a really dry landscape going into the dry season already. And then, of course, we have the historic fires last fall. And I think these two things have a lot of people on edge. People are nervous about this, especially when you consider that with those historic fires last fall, we're in the middle of COVID. Nobody could go out. People were feeling a little bit, uncertain anyway. And then you didn't even feel safe in your own home because of the smoke. So again, there's a lot of societal factors that are going into this. But remember this, the weather pattern we had last September, those historic winds, that is not likely to be repeated. Let me repeat that. We are not likely to get the winds that we got when we got them last September, early in September being the main point. And in case you forgot how strong those winds were, let me show you a graphic I did back in the fall. This was up at 7,000 feet on Mount Hood at the Magic Mile. Now, two things about that. 7,000 feet is an elevation above which most of the fires were burning. So granted that, and it's a very exposed location, but still, look at these winds. This is from the 7th to the 8th of September when those winds really cranked up. They were above hurricane force for at least 10 hours straight. And the gusts were between 95 and 106 miles an hour for 10 hours straight. So even if you, let's say, take half of these values, so your sustained winds were 40 and your gusts were 50, and you had that on the fires for 10 hours straight, that's extreme. And I've been forecasting in Oregon a long time, over 30 years. I've never seen winds like this that early in the season. That was a historic wind event. So that's what I mean. We're unlikely to see that 2 years in a row. Now, as far as summer goes, yeah, we are expecting a dry summer, but the odds of that are not really too much higher than normal for us here in the Northwest. They're higher down in the Southwest. What about rainfall? We're expecting a dry summer. That was a warm summer. This is a dry summer. Yes, we're expecting a dry summer. But again, to my point, we usually always have dry summers, so there's nothing unusual about that. What it'll really come down to, a couple of things. Lightning is one, but really human behavior, because most of our wildfires are started by humans now. So human behavior, lightning, and then when we get those fall rains, if they come early or if they come in a kind of a normal pattern, Maggie, and then we get the strong winds after that, that really lessens the chance of having the explosive kind of fires that we had last fall. So I guess my bottom line point would be, yeah, we're going into the dry season. Fire season is always a concern, but just because we had big fires and a lot of smoke last fall does not mean we're going to do that 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I think to your point, there's just a lot of, quite frankly, and not to use this phrase lightly, but PTSD.
Totally.
Truly, from last year. All of us feel it. So
people
it's
are stressed out about it. And I think that's why I keep getting that question, because everybody's on edge. Now, in terms of dealing with a changing climate, which we are expecting drier summers. And that, of course, can exacerbate fire season. But we're also expecting wetter falls and winter as we go through a changing climate, too. So there's a lot that we just have to wait and see how it plays out. But again, just because we had that tremendous fire season last fall, and if you think about it, it wasn't a bad fire season until we got those strong winds. And that made those fires just blow up. So up until that point, it hadn't been that bad of a season. Then it turned disastrous, of course, for so many people across not only Oregon, but the entire West.
Definitely. Love having a scientist on staff. Matt, thank you. Seriously, your perspective is really valuable. We appreciate it. All right, let's shift gears. Check in on Salem now, on the state capitol. It seems like we, unfortunately, talk a lot about sexual harassment allegations against lawmakers here in Oregon, including last night. So tonight, we're going to focus on a lawmaker in trouble for a different reason. It's a nice change, By in trouble, I mean in trouble with the law. I'm sure you remember this video from December of Republican Representative Mike Neerman opening the door to far-right protesters who were trying to get in to the Capitol building. It happened during a one-day special session in December. Unlike the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, which happened a few weeks later, these guys, they didn't get very far. You can see state troopers rushed in and pushed them out. Well, in April, Neerman got hit with 2 criminal charges, official misconduct in the first degree and criminal trespass in the second degree. And at the same time, the legislature hired an independent investigator to really look into what happened. So last night, that investigator dropped this report, and in it we learned that the Capitol Facilities Services Manager, David Hartsfield, filed a conduct complaint against Representative Neerman. His job involves basically building security, so you can imagine the kind of day he was having back in December when those demonstrators were breaking windows to try and get into the Oregon Capitol. Here's what the investigator determined according to his report. Quote, "The evidence supports a conclusion that Representative Neerman, more likely than not, intentionally assisted demonstrators in breaching security and entering the Capitol, and that his conduct is more likely than not set into motion a chain of events that impeded the ability of Mr. Hartsfield and others to function in the workplace and denied them the benefits of the workplace." So, That investigator says she came to the conclusion, basically, based on what she calls, quote, indisputable video footage, which we showed you, as well as interviews with Hartsfield and a group of Democratic lawmakers who also raised concerns about Neerman. That includes House Speaker Tina Kotek, by the way. The investigator says that Neerman himself wouldn't talk to her because his lawyer told him not to. He also hasn't responded to our requests for comment on this story. So now that this report is out, what happens? Well, lawmakers in the House Conduct Committee are going to meet next week to talk about what, if anything, should happen to Neerman. He's already been stripped of his committee assignments and he's faced calls to resign. In the meantime, he has another court date on June 21st for those criminal charges. We will keep you posted. All right, keep sending in your questions and your comments with the hashtag HeyDan. We'll read some of them when we finish the story next. A lot of great questions tonight. We have time for one. Sean tweeted, Maggie and the KGW team, all-encompassing tweet, who's paying for these vaccine lottery payouts? The feds, the state, private? And use that hashtag HeyDan. That's how we found it. So, Sean, great question. That money is coming from federal COVID relief funding here in Oregon. That's where the state $1 million jackpot is coming from, and that's where all the county $10,000 jackpots are coming from as well. So federal COVID relief money is the answer. Thank you guys so much for writing in, for tweeting, for suggesting, for asking. We love all of that feedback, and we love that you watched the story on this Thursday night. Stick around, though. The news at 6:30 with Laurel Porter is coming up next.